want to talk a little bit about why I think it's important for us to get this information. The list of cuts and the withholding of allocations by the budget agency and other agencies, I think is incredibly important. We need to know how much the cuts are, but more importantly than that, we need to know how those decisions are being made, who's setting the priorities. The budget document itself is a priority list for the state of Indiana, and are the cuts being made fairly and equitably across the board. So that's what the information that we've asked the governor for. I think it's important that I get this information and other members of the General Assembly get this information because we're on the front line and we're the first person that our constituents call when they have when they get a notice from the budget agency that their subsidy or their distribution is being cut. We're the ones that hear about it the most. And then I think that it's really important for the public to know how these decisions are being made and whether they're being applied equally and fairly across the board. There are a couple of other reasons that I think are really important. Some of we've tried to compile a list, and I don't know, has that been handed out? We're starting to compile a list of the cuts that we know about, and the only reason we know about those cuts is because our constituents are calling us and telling us what's being cut. But some of those cuts look to me to be penny wise and pound foolish. We also asked in the letter for the governor to begin preparations for a new revenue forecast, a more complete one with better information at the end of this fiscal year. He is making all of these cuts and these determinations based on a revenue forecast that was prepared in December, which was incomplete at best, and the Revenue Forecast Committee has asked for another revenue forecast to be prepared at May or June or so, when we would have better information. And I think we need regular updates on the revenue forecast at this point in time because the picture is changing so quickly, and because the governor has the authority. We gave him that authority to manage this budget, so he has the authority to make cuts, but he also has the authority to restore the cuts if the economic picture improves. And so we want to make sure that we continue to update that information, and so we've asked him to begin that process so that the Revenue Forecast Committee can begin their work.
There doesn't seem to be, at least from the perspective of where I'm seeing it, there doesn't seem to be any legislative involvement in terms of prioritizing or looking at these issues. For example, one of the advantages of being a citizen legislator is I first found out about the adoption subsidy cut when a client called me and said that she had received a letter stating that she was going to be receiving a 10% reduction in her adoption subsidies, and she knew I was a member of the General Assembly, and she asked, well, why didn't you give me a heads up on this, so we could plan? I said, well, I'm embarrassed to say that I had no idea this was coming. She faxed me the letter. That was the first I had heard of it, and I think that was in December sometime, and as Senator Simpson mentioned, those not only are a contract, they're ordered by the court. The adoption subsidies are ordered by juvenile and probate courts throughout the state of Indiana, so obviously there is litigation ongoing, so this may be one where we're saving some money now only to pay back monies in the form of a back pay award and attorney's fees later. So that's just an anecdotal example of the way these cuts just seem to be administered without any plan or forethought, at least in terms of being shared with all members of the General Assembly, because I'm certainly not aware of how they're being determined.
We're here to serve our constituents, and my constituents are confused. They don't understand. They're mad. They don't get it. And I want to be able to give them good information and tell them what the sequence of events have been and what kinds of thought went into the judgments that have been made. And if the governor doesn't, if he chooses not to share that information with us, then we can't defend him. We can't defend the cuts. I have no justification for them.